Hello, this is Northwest Prepper. So I don't generally get involved in the Canadian thing going on, but recently the Canadian government has declined buying F-35 aircraft. Okay, now I mean it's their right to decide what they want, but Bronx, stop! My dog is scratching himself, moving his chain around. But the thing is as a previous aircraft mechanic, I can tell you something. In war zones or time of strife, parts are a bitch to come by sometimes. You can ground entire fleets of aircraft because of one part, or lack of availability of certain types of oils, or stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Turn my phone down here. I don't need no disturbances on this. Should have done that before. But the thing is I've even seen this deployed with helicopters, where you don't get the right hydraulic fluid, you don't get like this or that, and all of a sudden 2/3 of your fleet's down and you're not operational. Now, I was just kind of curious about what Canada had for aircraft. And as I look here, right, a lot of the parts to maintain your aircraft comes from the U.S. Like they had Lockheed Martin F-35. Lockheed Martin is not based out of Canada. The Boeing P-8A Poseidon, not parts made in Canada. Now the Airbus, it's a European conglomeration. It's funded by the European Union. They can afford to lose money because basically the European Union owns them and a few investors, you know. But when you go through here, right, and you look at a lot of BAE Systems, Silver Fox, it's a drone experimentation center. Boeing Institute Scan Eagle, and that's the Canadian Army, right? And then you go to the other aircraft, Sikorsky, American made, Boeing CH-47F, American made. All your parts come from Boeing in the U.S. or wherever they get them from. Bell, same thing. The Bell CH-139, same thing. And you go Lockheed Martin, I mean, all these Boeing CC-177 Globemaster, right? All these parts come from the USA. Now I want you to think about this as a person who has experience with aircraft maintenance. It happens in conflict zones, okay? You can simply not have the right hydraulic fluid come in, or there's just none coming into theater, for example, and all of a sudden all your aircraft are down. You can't run missions, you can't do this, because you don't have any aircraft that are flyable. No. Canada needs to think about this. Because if Canada, per se, I mean, you want to attack America, that's fine, but most of your aircraft we can use. Or for parts, you know. There's no problem with stripping CH-47F models for D models. Or F models, or whatever. Doesn't matter. Well, parts are parts. But, I mean, but the thing is Canada has to understand that these tariffs are going to affect their aircraft parts. Aircraft parts are not cheap. Okay? They are not cheap. Okay? So basically when you strip a part down an aircraft, you don't just replace the one part. You try to replace every seal, everything, all the wire ties. I mean, you have QC inspections, the whole 9 yards. So it's not like it's just a little thing. I mean, if you have to do certain things, you reuse parts, you can, but it's preferred not to. But the thing is Canada has to solve this problem, you know, and at the same time, understand that the aircraft they ordered from Boeing for the F-35s, they lost hundreds of millions of dollars by canceling the order. And Boeing will sell those to someone else. The European Union already has F-35s. And you can buy one of these fancy aircraft from the European Union, but all your parts come from the European Union. If there is a real World War III, do you think you're going to get boatloads of parts from the European Union to fix those aircraft? No. You're better off sourcing those parts out of the USA. Now, of course, all these anti-Americans, I'm a Trump supporter, so you hate me, I don't care. But the fact of the matter is, as a veteran, prior service, aviation, and other assets, I know one thing. You can't get parts, you can't fly missions. You can strip off parts from other aircraft all you want, and all you're going to do is increase the number of aircraft that are unflyable permanently. So, a lot of people don't understand this, and Canada is not thinking about this because the people in charge don't understand that parts don't just grow on fucking trees. You know, say you need a new APU, auxiliary power unit, right? You don't just order or go to Walmart and buy an APU. Like for a helicopter, you have to go to Boeing most of the time, or whoever the manufacturer is in the US, and you have to get that part shipped to you. And it doesn't come in UPS overnight 24 hours. If they have the part available. Keyword if. If they have it, they're not going to tell you because they're just going to say it's going to take an extra 2 weeks to get it to you. So now you're waiting 2 weeks for the aircraft part to get in. Now, let's replicate this across the entire fleet of whatever aircraft you have. Even the drones have to be maintained. Okay? Someone has to maintain those drones. Okay? Unless you can source all those parts in your country, which I highly doubt. And even the US is having problems with sourcing parts that aren't made from overseas, which is going to be fixed with time. But the thing is Canada has to understand, it's not just tariffs, it's national defense for Canada. Okay? The United States, we have hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of Black Hawks. We can afford to strip Black Hawks down and get other units involved. We can get the parts if we have to. Same with Chinooks. Same with the CH-46 Sea Stallion. We have the parts available. Okay? Canada doesn't have the parts available. You know? And I'm telling you what, pilots do not want to fly an aircraft that are deemed a safety hazard. You got shit tons of red X's. A red X is basically a deficiency in the aircraft that makes it unflyable. Until they do a circle red X and they just say, now you can fly it because the commander takes responsibility and you fly the mission anyway and you hope you don't die. Now Canada is not seeing this for what it is. Looking at the number of soldiers Canada has, they don't even have the maintenance structure to support repairing and maintenance on aircraft. I guarantee. See, what people don't understand is the military doesn't own the airframe. They send the airframe back, they rip it apart, they refurbish it, they send it back to the military as a new aircraft. Okay, right? So you don't really own the airframe. Black Hawk's the same way, everything. You can say you own it, but you don't really own it because only the manufacturer has to rebuild it off the same airframe or make alterations. So Canada is not really in understanding that if you want to have air power to defend your country against Chinese or Russians or, worst case scenario, even us, you have to maintain parts. You have to store extra parts. You have to look at records. Because if you don't, you will have a dead fleet, right? And satellites above be like, okay, these 10 aircraft have not moved in this time period. And then the Chinese see the same thing. So you have to understand that that these systems are not where you just turn it on and use it like in the movies and it works every time. Okay? Takes a lot of maintenance, a lot of time, and a lot of man hours to keep aircraft up in the air. Bronx, stop. Yeah. My German Shepherd has hot spots and still haven't fixed that. Haven't figured out what's wrong with her. But Canada needs to get off its ass and figure this out because the politicians aren't understanding. Look, recently in Australia they had naval Chinese naval warships circling around Australia. What's Canada gonna do when MiG 24s or MiG 21s? I'm not sure which ones the Russians are currently using. Decide to take a little trip and say hello to Canada. What are they gonna do? Because with the way things are with the U.S. now, and hockey games are anti-American, and they act like they hate us, blah blah blah. You know what? We don't have to protect Canada. They don't even defend themselves. I think it's like 1.2%, 1.4% of the GDP goes to national defense, and they're too interested in bringing in more people to replace modern Canadians. It's not like Ottawa wants to defend Canada. They just want the money for social programs. So the fact of the matter is, Canada is essentially undefendable because you cannot maintain aircraft that well unless you can source all the parts in Canada, which I highly doubt. Right? Unless you want to risk pilots flying aircraft that are going to fall apart mid-air. Right? I don't think that Canada can defend itself. You can have the biggest army you want, but if the Russians decide to cruise up with 300 MiGs, what are you going to fucking do? Why would America help? Why would we? Just think about this. If I was the Russians and I was going to invade Canada, I would avoid all U.S. host facilities, and I would just hit the rest and be like, you know what? U.S. is here. We're going to leave you alone. This is our agreement. We're not going to touch anything U.S. owned. We're just going to leave it alone. But the rest is open. It's like in Bosnia. Bosnia, you have the camps with the UN soldiers, right? Camp Bondsteel, right? Camp Bondsteel was a no-go zone for locals to attack. I'm not saying there weren't any kind of small attacks here and there, but the thing is they knew there were UN troops there. And they said, this is no man's land. We're not going anywhere near this because we'll get our asses smoked. It could easily be the same thing with NORAD and other things. NORAD would be like, hey, you got 300 bogeys coming in. And that's up to you, Canada. We told you now. We'll keep you informed. But that's it. And the Russians would not bomb any U.S. facilities. They'd be like, we were not going to hit any U.S. facilities or interests in Canada. And so the rest is on Canada. Now, you got to be realistic about this. So Canada can sit there and bark all this stuff out, but without America's help, you don't have the ability to maintain your aircraft or your jets or your fighters or anything else. You can scrounge parts as much as you want. You can wire stuff. You can do whatever you want, but in the end, it's not gonna hold your Air Force up. And the Air Force is what's the key thing for infrastructure. It's not so much land troops. It's the air superiority, which Canada does not have. I just looked at the numbers. It's if you look it up, I'm telling you, go to Wikipedia. I'm not saying Wikipedia is 100% accurate, but go to Wikipedia and get a general idea. And you know what? You're going to find that Canada does not have much of an Air Force. And I would bet money, as a prior maintenance mechanic for aircraft, I would bet money that 25% of the aircraft isn't even flyable. Which means they're really screwed. Because the last thing that the Canadian Prime Minister is talking about, or whoever they're in the government, is accessibility, maintenance, and flyability. Because the commanders are going to tell the people in charge in Canada, they're going to say, we're ready to go anytime, sir. When they're not. So Canada, you need to get off your ass for your own personal defense. And you can join the European Union, that's fine. And you can buy European Union aircraft, but you can't source those parts out of America when you can't get parts from Europe. And those aircraft are just giant paperweights. So, something to consider. So I'm going to end the video, and if you want, feel free to leave a comment, blah, blah, blah. I know you two don't like me because I'm a Republican and I am a patriot, and I'm a Trump supporter. And you can hate me for that, I don't care. But I know YouTube hates people like me because I'm just too realistic on that shit. So have a good one.